Thank you, Mayor and council members. I just ask for your patience just a little bit longer while we get through these technological challenges.
Well, we don't need a script. We just need one number two. Krista, are we ready to go?
Thank you. We're ready.
Good evening. I apologize for our being a little bit late starting. That was the result of our being in a closed session, which took us a little longer than we thought. But we're now back in open session. There were no actions taken in the closed session which are reportable. So we're going to go to our agenda. The first item that we have is item number 5, which is an opportunity to express our appreciation to one of our town employees, and our recreation manager, Gretchen Kastitz, is going to lead that off.
Is it on? Yeah. Okay. I'm Gretchen Kastitz, recreation manager for 6 more days. I feel very grateful that one of my final duties as recreation manager is to honor Janine Wagner, who has been here for over 5 years as a recreation specialist. She is an incredible employee, coworker, and dear friend of mine. So I'm very grateful to be able to do this tonight. So like we said, Janine has been here for over 5 years. She has a background in international marketing, event planning, and has a Bachelor's of Arts in Economics from Mills College. She used all of those different skills to come and brought them to the Recreation Department, has created many new, well-received programs for both the youth and adults. She is a true local. She grew up in Ross, attended Ross Elementary middle school, and has now come full circle with her son Hayden, who is now in 7th grade there, and he started in kindergarten. And he's like our little sidekick in the office as well. She is passionate about enriching the Ross community, and she is an invaluable asset to the department and the town. She loves to go on hikes outdoors with her dog, Joey, and we get to have him visit once in a while too. And she is just a really wonderful person to have here and in anybody's life, if I would say so myself. So I'm going to miss working with her, but I've already told her she's not getting rid of me. It's not goodbye, and I'm very grateful to have had her as my right-hand lady for over 5 years. So Janine, thank you for being part of the recreation team and all that you do for the town.
Janine, if you come up here, we have a couple of things for you.
Watch out for the wires. I think behind,
No,
or go
you
around
just
this way.
come here.
This is your obstacle.
I'm sorry, I didn't know you had to get through all that. Well, first of all, we have a certificate of appreciation which you can hang in an appropriate place in your home or your office. And secondly, we have a little gift for you. And I don't want to repeat what Gretchen has said, but I certainly want to adopt it. We all appreciate how much fine work you've done for the town in the 5 years you've been with us. Thanks a lot. The next item on our agenda is to introduce and welcome a new employee, and I will turn that over to Krista for that purpose.
Oh, thank you so much, Mayor Cool. It is my pleasure to introduce Maureen Borthwick as the new Recreation Manager for the town of Ross. Welcome. I have a few more things to say. This is, yeah. I have just a few things that I could help introduce Maureen. So after a 12-year career in retail marketing and events, Maureen found her passion in recreation and community engagement, using her experience in project management and events to create programs that enrich the lives of residents in the community. She has been in the recreation field now for 6 years, working for the Belvedere Tiburon Joint Recreation, that's also known as The Ranch, as their adult program supervisor before accepting her new position in Ross. With her husband, Brian, and 16-month-old daughter, Maeve, Maureen and her family recently moved from San Anselmo to Petaluma. Originally from upstate New York, Maureen graduated from SUNY, exactly, with a degree in psychology and biology, and she has been living on the West Coast for over 10 years. She is excited to enhance the experience of living in Ross through recreation and to make a connection with as many residents as she can. Welcome, Maureen.
Cool and council, first I would like to thank you, and then also Krista and welcome to the town of Ross. I obviously am Maureen Borthwick, the new recreation manager, and I have been in recreation for a while now. Mainly and all with Tiburon and Belvedere, and I'm very excited to extend my career and continue forward in Ross to see what we can do and how we can grow. So I had the pleasure of meeting H. Gunling yesterday and planning the luncheon, and just based on that, my second day, I'm still here. I'm planning on continuing, and so far it's been wonderful, and I so appreciate the warmth from everybody in the town. Looking forward to a long stint career.
Well, we're very pleased to have you join us, and we look forward to seeing you a lot, to working with you a lot in running our recreation program.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is open time for public expression. This is an opportunity for members of the public to address the council on items that are not on our agenda for tonight. Is there anyone in the hall who wishes to address us? Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to address us?
There are no raised hands.
Okay. That will move us on to the next item, which is my monthly report. Greetings and Happy New Year. As we persevere through the cold and rainy days of winter, we can look forward to nicer, longer days and more time outdoors. We can also look forward to town council activities, which will have a significant impact on our town. Most immediately, the council will shortly have to consider changes in the way the Ross Valley Fire Department, of which the town is one of 4 participant communities, operates. Currently, our chief and administrative services are provided under a contract with the Marin County Fire Department, which terminates in June, in the 1st of July. So the Ross Valley Fire Department has engaged consultants expert in fire department administration to advise on possible new arrangements. Those consultants have reported to the board of the Ross Valley Fire Department, which will shortly reach a decision subject to the approval of the member entities such as Ross. Our council will consider this subject in upcoming council meetings. Next, our flood control project and those of neighboring communities are being led by the County of Marin. Compliance with federal floodway regulations have apparently slowed progress, but we expect shortly to receive a status report and a plan for moving forward. In coming months, the council will receive from our design consultants a proposal for reconstruction of our civic center once our firehouse is closed in 2025. We need to design a new facility to house our police department, ambulance and paramedics, and administrative services. The process of planning these new facilities will be ongoing for an extended period of time. In addition to these major activities, we expect to continue improvements to the commons and to work on our housing plan. Finally, by the end of the year, municipal election campaigns will be starting up. We expect the Ross Town Council to have at least 2 openings to be filled in the 2024 election. It should be a busy year and a productive one for the council. I urge you to continue to provide your input. Resident participation really does assist the council in providing our community with the best results. The next item on our agenda is council committee and liaison reports. Elizabeth and I are going to attempt some sort of report on the Ross Valley Fire Department. There was a meeting of the board. Elizabeth and I serve as the representatives of the town on that board, and last night we received a report from our consultants on their ideas, initial thoughts on how we should rearrange our governance and our administration. It's pretty complicated, and I'm not going to attempt to outline the whole thing. If you want to look at it, we should have online a copy of their report, which is, I think, about 20 pages long, and we're not going to try and reiterate that, other than to say that at some point, the consultants or someone from the management of the fire department will be coming to one of our meetings to relate to us what the choices are and what the pros and cons of them are. And I think I think I better leave it right there for now. Do you have anything further to report, Elizabeth?
Going into great detail, that they obviously talked through a independent or dependent fire district, which requires LAFCO approval. And then there was discussion of a joint powers authority and a joint powers agreement. We're a joint powers authority at present. And then they further talked about, continuing on as its own district. And there was also talk about merging with another entity, and their proposal was Central Marin Fire. And there was some talk about the time frame of that, which I believe it was, is it July 1 or end of July? Is when our contract with Jason Weber providing chief services comes up.
July 1st.
July 1. Yeah, so then, but could we get an interim fire chief, or could we, see if Chief Meager wants to come back out of retirement? I mean, I think those are possibilities, or extend that contract with Chief Weber. But it certainly is something that we're going to have to look at in terms of what we want to do and how we're going to do it. And right now we do have interim Chief Mahoney, Dan Mahoney, who's doing an excellent job and is, been on the force for a long time. So I think there could be discussions further about that, and then also costs associated with the different options. So we didn't get more into it other than them outlining the various proposals and questions asked. So there wasn't a discussion of the board. So I think that's going to happen further, and then we'll have to see. I think that there was discussion about how much board approval we have to have, and depending on certain triggers like costs and stuff like that, it could have to be a unanimous decision as well. So just a lot ahead, which we all knew was going to happen.
A unanimous decision would require 8 directors voting for the proposal. Okay, that brings us to staff and community reports, and first off is our town manager.
I just wanted to report to everyone that on January 6th, Friday, when most of the Ross Valley had no power, I attended the Ross Valley Emergency Preparedness, Climate Action, and Age-Friendly meeting at the Fairfax Library. And I just wanted to reiterate for people the 5 simple steps that people need to take to get ready for an emergency. Number 1, make sure that you have signed up for alerts, Alert Marin and Nixle. Number 2, make a plan. So if there is an evacuation, you have a place to meet your loved ones and they know that place too. Number 3, organize your supplies and pack a go bag and keep it by your door. Number 4, organize supplies to use if you are ordered to shelter in place. And the presumption is you're going to be on your own for up to 72 hours, right, Chief Pata? 72 hours. And number 5 is connect with your neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the town manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor Cool. So good evening, Mayor and council members. I have a couple of updates with you this evening, but while Gretchen Kastitz, our current recreation manager, is still here in the room, I'd like to thank her for giving us an extra month of service before she departs on her next life adventure. I know Gretchen really cares about her team in Ross Recreation and the members of the community that they serve. We've been fortunate to have her with us these past 6 years and wish her the very best in her future endeavors. We'll miss you, Gretchen. Can we give her a round of applause? Thank you. Okay, well, we've had a lot of rain since the council's last meeting on December 8th. In December 2022 alone, we received a total of 17.8 inches of rain. As of Tuesday, a couple days ago, the rainfall has totaled 35.4 inches of rain, or 155% above normal for the water year, which began on July 1st, 2022. And that isn't counting all the rain we got yesterday, and it seemed like it rained all day and night. So we'll have some more totals coming up, but a lot of rainfall. Unlike some other parts of our state, Ross has weathered, pun intended, the storms relatively well, thanks in part to winter preparedness efforts by our residents, by Marin County Emergency Operations personnel and town staff. After the annual Winter is Coming townwide notification that went out on November 2nd, our public works staff took note of many residents that were clearing out roadside ditches on their property and drainage ways throughout the town. And that has helped to keep leaves and debris from clogging the town's pipes and drains when the big rains hit. So we thank them all for their work and encourage them to continue those efforts. Public Works maintenance staff have continued to clear drains, trees, debris from drainage ways, and to restock the sand and the sandbags that are stationed at the entrance of Natalie Coffin Green Park for residents to use during the rains. Bring your own shovel. And the rains are forecasted to continue well into next week. Staff will be monitoring the creek and the streets for flooding and for downed trees, and will call in for reinforcement as needed to respond. The Ross Valley Fire Department and the County of Marin have shown considerable leadership during these series of storms, and we are grateful for that leadership and for their resources and support that they provide to our town operations. tomorrow, Friday, the road into Natalie Coffin Green Park and the parking lot there are going to be closed all day due to a tree removal project by the town of Ross, by our contractors, and the use of a large crane. So the road will reopen early on Saturday morning. And that is my report for this evening. Thanks for the opportunity, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Is there anyone who is ready to report for the Ross Property Owners Association? I don't see anybody here, but there might be somebody online.
Yes, I have a raised hand. One moment. Alexandra, you can go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Hi, good evening. My name is Alexandra Hudson. I'm representing the RPOA. So 2022 was a strong year for us. We had a benefactor level of about 40%, which accumulated about 40% of our budget. We have about 325 members and raised over $65,000. A new post office table is in development. It will be a walnut table with classic design. We are also looking into modifying or adding brochure holders to the outdoor bulletin that will be waterproof and that can hold larger paper, more regular size, like 8.5 by 11. With the post office break-in, we contributed to fixing the front door lock and are acquiring security cameras that will have a monitor. Next live on the Common is going to be May 12th. It is an artist of, the artist is a member of the Mother Hips, which is an indie alternative folk rock music. The Ross Auxiliary will be hosting Spring Fling, and that will be on Sunday, April 2nd. Age Friendly will be holding a luncheon on February 15th at 11:30 at Marin Art and Garden Center. They will be honoring residents 80 years and older. The Branson A Cappella Choir will perform, and there will also be art from the Cedars. New resident welcome kits are at the post office and will be put in their PO boxes when they open one, and we'll be tracking metrics over the next 4 months. And then we're also proposing a historical story walk along Shady Lane or Ross Common with some fun facts and stories of our town. So that's our update.
Thank you, Alexandra.
Thank you.
That brings us to our consent agenda. There are
Why are you accusing me of being passive? Where's that coming from? I don't get it. Don't know where that's coming from.
I don't know. I'm just frustrated trying to get on Zoom and all I see is a title card. Hello.
trees coming down and whatnot. Before our electric restoration folks can begin their work, to your point, the tree crews come out and they have to make sure that everything's safe and cleared out and cleaned up and get it off the roads and clear out the wiring and whatnot. So while our folks doing the electric restoration and they're up in the trucks wiring, and a lot of folks see that, the first people that often come in are these folks, and I do appreciate you acknowledging that. probably they're the behind the scenes folks, but before that happens, the electricity doesn't get turned on. So thank you for that acknowledgement.
Thank you very much. We appreciate your coming and your answers.
We'll be back if you need us.
Okay. The next item on our agenda is council consideration of introduction of ordinance number 720, an ordinance of the town of Ross amending Ross Municipal Code Chapter 12.24 titled Planting, Alteration, Removal, or Maintenance of Trees. In other words, our tree protection ordinance. Rich, you're leading off on this?
Yes, I am. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Rich Simonich, Public Works Director. Hopefully, everybody can hear me who are attending off-site on the Zoom. Tonight we are looking to review the first reading of the Town Council amendment of the tree ordinance. Ordinance number 720, amending Ross Municipal Code, Section 12.24, also known as the tree ordinance. So I've got a brief presentation tonight on the ordinance itself. Usually this is a different version of PowerPoint, so I'm going to try to get a full-size view here. Slideshow up there? Okay. There we go. Thanks. So a brief overview of the changes to the tree ordinance. There's very few, and they're all related to fire safety and the removal of fire-prone trees or trees that have been identified as a fire hazard. As they relate to our code in both the removal of these types of trees through our tree permitting process or the replacement trees through that part of the ordinance that requires replacement of trees. We want to also not only remove these types of fire hazard trees, but we want to not replace them when other trees are removed under our tree ordinance. So the first one is 12.24, adds the definition of fire hazard to our ordinance. Just to clarify, since fire hazard the words fire hazards are referenced throughout the ordinance, we did want to add that definition for clarity and simplicity. That definition of fire hazard does reference the fire safe Marin list of fire prone trees and adds the condition that if those trees are within 30 feet of a habitable structure, they are considered a fire hazard. A little bit later on in this presentation, we're going to talk a little bit about the selection of the types of species that represent a fire hazard. The next section, 12.24.0801, provides the Public Works Director to waive the tree permit fee for the removal of a tree that is by definition a fire hazard or it's also located within the public right-of-way. We currently waive the fee for trees, any types of trees that are to be removed within the public right-of-way under a policy, and this just codifies that policy. And the purpose is, of course, to encourage and facilitate the removal of these types of hazardous trees from the right-of-way and private property. The next section is just a minor clarification of the code just says the town may waive the arborist report. Well, we're going to specify that, proposing that it's the Public Works Director that can waive the arborist report requirement. Next one is just a very minor clarification related to the definition of fire hazard. And number 5, 12.24.0804C includes fire hazard in the category of hazardous trees for the purpose of tree replacement criteria, and then restricts the use of fire-prone trees as tree replacements. And the final change is that restricts the use of fire-prone trees or shrubs as an alternative to a replacement. And attachment 2 is the current ordinance with the track changes so that you can easily follow along and identify what the changes were to the ordinance. So next I move that discussion to identifying which species qualifies as a fire hazard. So currently the draft ordinance refers to the Fire Safe Marin list that's posted on the Fire Safe Marin website. So there could be problematic in using that type of list. The species data is not really supported or cited by reference to any studies. And of course, the document itself could be subject to revisions or even rescission by the Fire Safe Marin or their successor agency. So while we are proposing to use this list within our ordinance, I'd like to take the opportunity to maybe discuss some alternatives to that tonight, just for your consideration. So alternatives to that list, council may wish to consider adopting our own precise list of trees that should be considered as fire hazard. We could defer the decision to a local fire authority on a case-by-case basis and let them, we call the fire department and say, do you consider this a fire hazard in the town of Ross? They say yes. We can act on it in that respect. And that's kind of the Marin County policy. They defer to the fire department on making these types of decisions. We could defer the decision to the Public Works Director, who will reference the best available information for Marin cities and towns. Or we could also defer to the town arborist in the same way, and he would use his expertise and the best available information on trees that are considered fire hazards. So continuing with the discussion, so these are 3 towns that in Marin County that do actually have a list in their code or within their policies. And you can see there's a lot of similarities, but then again, when you look at Mill Valley and San Rafael, both list bamboo. Larkspur does not list bamboo. Larkspur lists a few trees that San Rafael and Mill Valley don't list. I don't want to cloud the issue, but I believe the best way that we could do this is maybe not refer per se to an actual list within the code, but maybe have a more of a case-by-case basis or something like that. So I brought this up for a little bit of discussion on this first reading, and with that, I'm going to close out my report and give it back to the council for discussion.
Thanks, Rich. Does any member of the council have questions for Rich?
I do. Can you just tell us where, you just had different proposals for species qualifying as a fire hazard, but can you tell us where in the ordinance we would look for that? Is that 12.24.020 under definitions?
Yes, I believe so.
And so currently, the way you've written it is that it's the list of species published by Fire Safe Marin. Is that correct?
Yes, that's under the definitions, correct.
And Fire Safe Marin doesn't, it's got its own species list. It's not going
Yes.
to an arborist, it's not going to what other towns are doing, it's just got its own list.
That's correct, and the list is attached as attachment 3 at the end of the.
And that list is what, when residents want to rebuild or do a renovation, if they want to use one of those species, that they're regulated by that list already. Is that fair?
The Fire Safe Marin is an advisory committee. They don't have ordinances and laws, so it's really an advisory type committee. So they're not compelled to use this list.
So this is not the organization that Julie serves. This is not Ross Valley Fire. This Fire Safe Marin their list is being created how?
That's a good question. I could not find any supporting documentation on how that list was created.
Well, could I just add something, Elizabeth? I've spent quite a bit of time talking to the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority Executive Officer about the Fire Safe Marin lists. They have two lists. They have a list of fire-resistant plants, and then they have a list of, bad plants that are more flammable. The Fire Safe Marin organization is funded by the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority. But Rich is correct in that their list is not scientifically based. It's more empirically based, experientially based. I'm also a master gardener, and the thing that master gardener experts will tell you is that every plant can burn. There's no such thing as a fire-resistant plant. Every plant can burn, and it's the most important things are plant placement and plant maintenance. But there are a handful of plants based on experience that do burn much more rapidly. And the list that Larkspur uses is a list that I shared with the Marin Wildfire Prevention Authority Executive Officer, and he actually thought that that list was very complete and good. The Fire Safe Marin list is incredibly long, and they are actually talking about changing the list, either paring it down to make it more like one of these lists, much more narrow, or eliminating the list altogether, because they don't have any citations for how they come up with these more flammable plants, and it's just kind of loosey-goosey. They're getting frustrated by having those lists. So I think Rich is correct in that we should not be relying on Fire Safe Marin, because I think shortly they're going to eliminate the list.
Well, I know we talked about this at Ross Valley Fire Department, and we asked them, would you guys agree with this dirty dozen that San Rafael has done and Mill Valley? And they were against that. They declined they just didn't agree philosophically with how that was happening. So I'm kind of a little confused. I don't like the idea of it being this entity that is not bound by anything, and any successor organization, because that could just really, but I agree, obviously there are some plants that are, people should be able to remove no problem. So I'm not sure what to do with that, but was trying to figure out that. So that's where it is in the code that we're looking at, though, its
Right.
definitions.
Could I ask a question?
Yes.
Have we received input from the Ross Valley Fire Department on how we're approaching this?
No, they did not review the staff report or attachments, but they defer to the Fire Safe Marin list. In fact, it's on their website. And they point in that direction, the
Okay.
Ross Valley Fire.
Okay, but I have one other question. When we say in that definition of fire hazard that it has to be located within 30 feet of a habitable structure, where is that coming from?
That's also coming from that's either coming from the list, it's coming from the fire-prone plants section of your attachment number 3. I believe that's attachment 3 at the very bottom of that paragraph of fire-prone plants. It says other fire-prone natives should be maintained in isolated stands more than 30 feet from structures. So I added that to the list based on this recommendation.
Well, this is more of a comment instead of a question, so maybe we should just get all the questions first and then have public comment.
Anyone else? Elizabeth?
Rich, I have a question. It's not about the fire changes, but in section 2 of 1224-080, number 3, where there are additional criteria for approval of a tree alteration or removal permit, 3B says the effect of the requested alteration or removal on shade areas or solar access. So does solar access, does that mean that there could be an approval for an alteration or removal so that someone could have solar panels. Is that what solar access means?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Rich? It's not at the moment. Okay, so now we'll open it up for public comment. Is there anyone in the building who wants to ask a question or make a comment about this proposal? Is there anyone on Zoom who is asking?
There are no
Okay.
hands raised.
Then we'll bring it back to the council for further consideration and potential action. You have a comment?
Yeah, I like the specificity of the list. I would want to include bamboo. I would take the Larkspur list and add bamboo. But I would also have another section that says like Marin County. So it could be in the list, or it could be identified by a fire inspector as a fire hazard. And so that way we have both things kind of covered. I think it's good to give homeowners specificity about what is bad. I also don't like this 30 feet of habitable structure restriction. I think if you have a big property and there's a huge acacia 31 feet away from your habitable structure, I don't think you should get charged to remove that tree. So I don't know where that 30 feet thing is coming from. And I would delete it.
Where in the code are you talking about?
It's in the definition of fire hazard. It says it has to
Where?
be, 1224.020 under definitions, it's number 4, fire hazard. The last part, it says, and it has to be located within 30 feet of a habitable structure.
Yep. Page 2 of attachment 2. So I wanted to put in some parameter for the replacement tree idea, except I guess it is a little bit redundant since they can't use a fire-prone tree anyway. So that's a good consideration. Yes. And just to clarify, Julie, you are recommending using the Larkspur list plus adding bamboo species and requiring a fire inspector, or if a fire inspector also chimes in, then I can consider that.
Yeah, it would be an or. So it would
Okay.
be or. So either it fits in the list, or the tree has been identified by a fire inspector as a fire hazard. I think that gives people more discretion.
So I'm sorry, the Larkspur list isn't in our council
No,
report.
it's up here.
And Julie, the 30 feet requirement that you call out,
Yep.
you're saying that even if it's 31 feet, a fire hazard tree shouldn't be allowed?
I don't think there should be any restriction on the location of the tree in order to have the fee removed. The tree could be, 38 feet away from your house. I don't think we should be charging people to remove flammable trees. So I would remove that whole and located within 30 feet of a habitable structure. Because
see.
I don't know what that's based on anyway, and I don't think Fire Safe Marin knows what it's based on either.
Well, and what about this acacia? The acacia has to be 50 feet or taller in order for it to be deemed undesirable. So it's 40 feet tall and you're not going to remove it? I mean, that seems like a weird provision.
Yeah, I agree.
Bill?
There's also a couple of other distinctions that could be made. I'm not saying we necessarily should, but just to throw this out. Some of our properties, including mine, are in these high fire risk zones. And they also happen to be, most of them very hilly, some and very steeply hilly regions, so fire can spread very rapidly. And I think that's perhaps another reason for not having a distance limit. I mean, if you're uphill, it's coming, and you should get rid of it. I would suggest either eliminating the distance requirement or treating those houses that are in the hills and in high fire risk areas differently if would be another possible approach.
But if we're going to eliminate the 30 feet, we should substitute something about a fire official deciding that it's a danger, shouldn't we? Otherwise, it's wide open. Otherwise, who do you go to?
Well, it could be either on the list or if a fire inspector deems the tree to be a hazard, then it could be removed too without a fee. So it could be either one of those.
That's
But
what-
I agree with Elizabeth in terms of the 50 feet in height. I think any acacia should be removed, period. I don't think it should be any height.
You following all this, Rich?
Mill Valley has acacia, no height limit. And so does San Rafael, no height limit. I think I would feel better if I'm not quite understanding what the Ross Valley Fire Department recommends or doesn't recommend.
And I know we had, do you remember that? We had some talk after Mill Valley had passed their dirty dozen, and I think San Rafael had done the same, and they declined to do that. And I think for kind of the reason you said, that there can be trees that are fire hazard that are not on that list, or there can be trees that are in really good shape, some of which, could be on certain lists.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. May I ask a question based
Sure.
on Councilmember McMillan's suggestion to request to remove that 30 foot limit? The word waive usually is, we usually have costs involved, and it's not just, so if we're not getting reimbursed for costs, I would want to make sure that we all understand if there is going to be an increase of costs that we will no longer be reimbursed for through a fee, a permit fee. If we still have costs in terms of staffing, et cetera, I want to make sure it's not going to be, we understand it's not going to be really increased because we are then not getting a fee for any tree on someone's property that's removed, that's on the Larkspur list plus bamboo, right? Do you think, Rich, that is any kind of significance, or is it something we need to evaluate, or what kind of staff costs are we going to have involved that we will no longer be reimbursed for, meaning the rest of our community, everybody is going to be subsidizing that, and that could very well be okay with the council. I just want to make sure we're transparent about that.
Right, so that type of impact is not really significant because when the fire district comes through on a property and makes their own recommendations for tree removals, they'll pick out all these trees before we even get there, and then we waive those fees anyway. So it wouldn't be that significant. For the most part, we're already waiving those types of fees that the fire department is, of those trees that the fire department is identifying, so.
So the staff work would be the property owner would identify what trees they want to remove and indicate which dirty dozen tree it is, and then our staff would check it against the list and then say, okay, issue the permit. Are those the staff costs that are involved?
Yeah, basically that, and then a follow-up visit to make sure it was done properly.
And a follow-up on-site visit.
Yes.
Do you do a site inspection to approve the tree removal if the fire department doesn't call it out? If I just walked in and said I got an acacia, would you go and be like, I need to see this acacia before Elizabeth removes it?
Yes, every time we have, it's not me, but it's Anthony and Ed Gurka. Will make sure every tree is on the permit is the actual tree being removed.
And then you come back and see if I did it right.
Yes.
It's section 2 inspections.
And so when he mentioned Ed Gurka, so there's one, it's staff time, then we're paying a staff person, it just means they're not doing something else, right? But when it's at Mr. Gurka, we are paying an invoice too, because he's an outside
Well, maybe
contractor,
we just
just so
get a
you
really
know.
good picture of these dirty dozen trees so that Anthony can get really good at evaluating it, and we don't have Ed Gurka go out.
Right.
That's one way to solve that problem. Or we just have people take a picture and we just kind of trust that they're going to remove the tree that they just said.
Yeah, there are ways that we can do that remotely or send us a picture. I do that occasionally on my own public works inspections, so I'm not driving all the way around looking at every pavement restoration. Send me a picture, I know what to look for.
And there's an app to identify trees, so, you can just do it online.
Yes.
I also want to point out that I don't feel like the community would be subsidizing the homeowner who's removing the tree, because by removing the tree, you're actually making the community safer. So it's enhancing the value of the property by removing the tree for the property owner, but it's also enhancing the community safety because you're reducing the spread of wildfire, by eliminating those highly flammable trees. And the staff report said $3,000 per year. So I'm up for that.
You comfortable with that number, Rich?
Yeah, it's a
10
ballpark
trees.
estimate, but I think it's fairly accurate.
Rich, is this a first reading tonight? We're not voting on this?
This
Or
is
are
the-
we?
Well, this is the first reading, yes.
Reading we vote on.
I see. Oh, okay. Okay.
Well, or we can continue.
So,
Let's not do this again, guys. I'm ready to move on, and therefore I could, if you want a motion.
Sure.
Okay, I move to adopt ordinance number 720. What? Introduce. Ordinance number 720, amending Ross Municipal Code 12.24 with the amendments that we discussed.
Should read those amendments. So I can read them. From my understanding, we are replacing the references to the Fire Safe Marin list with the Town of Ross list, which includes, which is the Larkspur list, plus the inclusion of the species bamboo. Remove the 30-foot requirement, the 30-foot from habitable structure requirement. Remove the height limit on acacia trees, and also allow a deferred recommendation from the fire inspector as part of the decision process.
So moved.
second.
And we need a roll call vote.
All right, Councilmember McMillan,
Aye.
Councilmember Kircher,
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins,
Aye.
Mayor Cool,
Aye.
Councilmember Burkus.
Aye.
All right, with a vote of 5, it passes unanimously.
Mr. Mayor, excuse me.
Yes.
Just a quick clarification with our town attorney. Are those amendments are they unsubstantive enough that we can come back for second reading on your February meeting?
Well, they're substantive, but we made the changes.
They're
Rich read
okay.
the changes. We're good, so on
We're
this,
good, so we
yes.
can come back for a second reading.
Correct.
Wonderful, thank you.
had a suggestion that we move item 14 to the end of the agenda so that we can deal with the things that people are here about. Does anybody object to moving that, to making that change to the agenda? Is that good enough, Ben?
Yeah, there's actually two items, 14 and 14A, with the intent
Yes,
to move
you're
both.
right.
May we keep 14A?
We're just moving it later.
Is it possible to do 14A now? And then 14, there's 14 and there's 14A.
Remind us about 14A.
14A is the Town of Fairfax police staffing.
Oh, yeah. Is everyone okay with taking 14A now and then deferring 14 until after 15 and 16? Okay. All right, 14A. Are you leading on this one, Krista?
Yes, sir, with the assistance of Chief Pata, who's on his way up. Thank you, Mayor and council members. Chief Pata and I are here this evening to discuss item 14A, which is a recommendation to authorize the town manager to negotiate and execute an agreement with the town of Fairfax to provide the town of Ross with temporary police officer staffing during a period commencing today through June 30th in an amount not to exceed $75,000. I just have a couple of introductory remarks, and then I'd like to hand it over to Chief Pata to give you some more specifics. Similar to most police departments, especially those in the Bay Area, the town of Ross Police Department is experiencing staffing shortages and has for over the past year. With only 5 of its 8 positions filled, the department has been continuing to operate with strong leadership from Chief Pata, officers and our 2 sergeants performing extensive overtime. And the town's retired police chief, Masterson, has been working part-time and filling patrol shifts as well. Last weekend, one of our hardworking police officers was injured on duty and is now on leave. And this is resulting in a police department that now has 50% staffing. This is not sustainable and requires immediate action in order for the town police department to continue to provide that 24-hour police response. Under Chief Pata's direction, the Ross Police Department has developed a strong partnership with the town of Fairfax Police Department. And I am recommending this evening that you do authorize me to negotiate and execute an agreement with the town of Fairfax to provide Ross with temporary police staffing through June 30th in an amount not to exceed $75,000. I would like to note that we do have salary savings in the police department budget because of these vacancies. And so the $75,000, that would not require an additional appropriation from the council. We would be taking that from the appropriated level. If the council does authorize this temporary arrangement, I would work with Chief Pata, our town attorney, and our counterparts in Fairfax to put an agreement in place as soon as possible. This agreement does require town of Fairfax town council approval as well. I'm going to hand this over to Chief Pata, and he can discuss how the temporary program will be implemented here and the costs involved. And he can also briefly describe for you and the public that's listening his efforts over this past year, 2 years, to fill Ross vacancies. Okay, thank you. Chief Pata?
Good morning, or good morning. Goes to show you what's been going on. Good evening, Mayor Cool, members of the council. So it's been a rough year or so, and it got a little rougher last Sunday with the loss of a temporary loss, I hope, of this officer. So as it stands now, it's looking like that minimum, he's going to be off work for an extended period of time. I'm guessing about 6 months to heal from this injury. So when I came here, we were already down some positions, and so we've been trying as the traditional stuff to get people to come here. We've been advertising. I leveraged some of my relationships in the county, and I was looking for. I also leveraged some folks that I know at retirement to help look for people who perhaps were looking for something to do after their retirement. It's been difficult. In fact, the survey from the California State Police Chiefs has come back showing that the #1 problem right now in the state of California for the chiefs isn't necessarily what's going on crime-wise. We know that, but it's the hiring and retention of police officers in this state. So it's a statewide problem, and it's a little harder for a town like ours to find qualified people. Simply going to the police academy doesn't make you qualified to be a police officer. So after that, there's an exhaustive list of testing and protocols that you have to pass to be able to work as a police officer. That testing all by itself takes about 6 weeks to get through. So I was spending a lot of my time trying to find people, and finally I know somebody that just retired who was the personnel manager for an agency inside the county who happens to train at the police academy. So I thought this was a perfect opportunity for us. So he's helping us recruit people right now. He's already brought one officer candidate that I hope to bring before you next month as a new employee. That won't help a lot of, it will help us in the long run, but that officer will still require 12 weeks of training. So we have to fill about 80 shifts between now and those 12 weeks before we hope that this person passes their training. So Sunday after I returned home from the hospital, I called Chief Tabaranza at Fairfax because I knew that this is not sustainable for our agency. We have four 24-hour shifts to fill every week, and we have 3 officers to do it, and myself. So I spoke to him about this. I said, could you look around and see if this is something your agency could help us with? They're a natural fit for us. We share the same software for report writing. They cover us now on calls. We cover them. We train with each other. Our policies and procedures are essentially the same manuals. We've adopted a lot of their policies here as well. And our dispatch services come from Fairfax. So it's a good fit for our town. And from time to time, they come to town to help us, and we go to help them. So he has agreed to help us with this, again, with all of the permissions and working with his counsel and his manager. Essentially, what my proposal would be is that each week we determine the number of shifts that we need to fill. We will be able to fill some of these shifts, but some of our officers, either by sick, vacation, or just wanting a day off, will create vacancies for us. So once I determine how many shifts are open, I'll reach out to Chief Tabaranza, and the proposal is that his people will sign up for those opening shifts that we have. Right now, it looks like there'll be the overnight shift, so there shouldn't be a lot of work for them to do in the overnight, we're hoping. Those are also harder for us to fill internally. So we've asked them to look at that. Once those shifts are filled, they will come here to our town. They will drive our cars. They'll be in their uniforms, but they'll be in our cars. And they have some familiarity with our town, with our streets, because they already are coming in here now to provide backup for us, and they'll handle our calls for us. They know how to write the police reports that we write. Pretty much all of that is all standard. So, and it's the same software system, so they know it. They won't have to learn how to do anything differently. Essentially, they'll be here in town, not in Fairfax. They'll be here in our town, patrolling our streets and responding to our calls when we have them. So to do all of that, we would have to take up their costs. And so the reason, the way we came up with the 75,000, no more than $75,000 number is based on their overtime rate for a police officer and a sergeant. We're asking for an officer, we're not asking for a sergeant to come here. There will be supervision available to us if we need it. As it stands now, in the middle of the night, if something large comes up, they'll call me at home and I'll provide that same service. But if they don't have an officer available for us and we need to fill that shift and there's a sergeant available, they may send that sergeant over, but that's not the first preference. So their overtime rate plus their night differential, which we have as well here, is how we came up with that cost. I think that is it. So we are, the best I can tell you is we're working really hard. We had a candidate come in today to interview for the second position that's open. Fingers crossed that this all works out. We're trying our best. And I'm happy to.
This could be confusing for the residents if they're driving around in our cars, but they have Fairfax uniforms. How are we planning on explaining to residents what we're doing for the next 6 months?
I mean, what I'm trying to do, I'm trying to keep the costs down and not have them buy other uniforms. Really, the only difference in their uniform is a patch. I would say that it would be a good opportunity for us to educate and bring our community up to speed on this is what we're doing. So I'm hoping that will help offset it. But certainly, if it's the wish of everybody that we get them our uniforms, we could probably do that. But again, I think it's pretty much a patch.
Any other member of the council have questions for the chief? Okay, if not, I'll open it up to the public comment on this item. Is there anyone in the chamber who wishes to comment? Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to comment?
There are no raised hands.
Okay, I'll bring it back to council for further consideration. Anyone want to comment about this?
It sounds like you're doing a great job and appreciate your finding coverage for us. So I move we approve the $75,000.
Thank you.
And you just call the roll.
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Mayor Cool?
Aye.
Councilmember Breckus? Aye. All right, with a vote of 5, passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mayor and Council.
This brings us to item number 15, 78 Shady Lane demolition, design review and variance and town council consideration of adoption of resolution number 2285.
I'm going to recuse myself because I'm within the non-appropriate jurisdiction.
Good evening, Mayor Cool and council members. The project site before you tonight is a 9,696 square foot lot located at the intersection of Shady Lane and Locust Avenue. The lot is a relatively flat lot adjacent to single-family homes and located in the flood zone. The property contains an existing single-family residence with detached carport. Tonight, the applicant is requesting approval of demolition, design review, nonconformity permit, and a variance for renovation and remodel to the existing single-family dwelling. The project includes demolishing the existing 580 square foot carport and construction of a new 391 square foot garage in the side yard setback, which requires the variance. 2 separate additions are proposed on the second story. A 116 square foot addition is proposed above an existing first floor roof on the right side of the home to match the lower floor roof. A 19 square foot addition is proposed on the left, also above a roof eave. A 93 square foot addition is proposed on the first floor in between 2 sections of the home, also on the right side of the structure. The project has been to ADR 3 times, August, September, and November of last year. there are 2 ADR members that were recused from this project. At the first ADR meeting, the ADR members were supportive of the project conceptually, demolishing the garage and the small additions. They mentioned that the home needs updating and that the project seemed reasonable. However, the garage was proposed in the side and rear yard setbacks, and they asked that it be moved to meet the 10-foot rear yard setback requirement. The ADR members also at that meeting asked for a landscape plan. At the September meeting, they were all supportive of the additions as submitted and that they could support the findings for design review, nonconformity, and variance. The ADR members were adamant that they wanted a landscape plan prepared by a landscape architect. Even though they were supportive of the improvements, they wanted the project to return so that they could review the landscape plan only. At the November meeting, the ADR recommended approval to the town council pending staff work with an ADR member on the final landscape plan. Staff has worked with the ADR member, and the ADR is recommending approval of the project and landscape plan that is reflected in your packet tonight. At the time of writing the staff report, comments were received from the adjacent neighbor at 1 Locust Avenue, Cheryl and Dennis Unterman. The Untermans are concerned that the carport was not constructed prior to the floor area requirements of 1967. The project applicant has provided substantial evidence, which is in your packet, indicating that the structure was constructed prior to 1967 and therefore is conformance with the nonconformity section of the municipal code. Staff has received 2 additional emails from the neighbors, one in support of the project, who wanted to remain anonymous due to fear of backlash from the neighbor, and one neighbor who is opposed to the project. The neighbor who is opposed to the project emailed a letter of opposition to the ADR when they reviewed the project in August. Additionally, this neighbor did not provide an address, but is concerned with the variance findings as well as the bulk and mass of the structure. Tonight, it's recommended that Town Council consider adoption of Resolution 2285, approving demolition, design review, nonconformity, and the variance for the project at 78 Shady. And I am available for questions.
Does any member of the council have questions? Julie?
Rebecca, the variance pertains to the garage, not the rear setback, but the side setback, is that correct?
Correct.
Anyone else have questions? If not, I'll invite the project applicant to make a presentation, should she wish to do so. It is not necessary, and a representative can make the presentation. You'll have 15 minutes for the presentation and answering of questions by members of the council. Does the applicant or a representative wish to make a presentation?
I'm Tatiana Mironova, and I'm the owner and I'm the applicant for this project. And as Rebecca mentioned, I went through 3 design reviews and I addressed all the concerns of the neighbors and all the recommendations of the ADR meetings. And my project was approved on the last ADR meetings in November. And I also did extensive research to obtain nonconformity findings. I reached out to Marin County Library, I reached out to county assessors, and I did all the due diligence possible I could. And I do have tonight with me Sean Kennings, who will take over. And on Zoom, I do have my architect, Will Jones, and also my landscape architect, Robert Adams, who barged in on PG&E a little bit. So at this point, I will give it over to Sean.
Okay, and you have a total of 15 minutes to make this presentation.
Good evening, Mayor Cool and members of the council. I'm Sean Kennings. I'm a land use environmental planning consultant. In the past, I've actually worked for the town of Ross on contract. I'm not working for the town at this time. Thank you to Rebecca and her staff. I was contacted in December by the applicant to help her with this nonconformity research and review and to prepare the memo that you have in your packet today. I was not involved in the design review aspect of it. I will say, though, as explained by Rebecca and by the applicant, the project has been reviewed multiple times by the ADR. It is sensitive to bulk and mass, privacy of the neighbor. The garage was pulled back. I think it's a good plan. It's a needed upgrade for a property in the community. My task was to review the research that the applicant had conducted and to speak with the assessors to see if we could get some information about the historical nature of this property. I would like to point out, though, when you contact the assessors, you have to have authorization from the property owner. Somebody off the street just can't go and get assessor's records for anyone's property. I don't know how the neighbor was able to obtain those historical files. And I'd like to point out that the annotations in those files that you have in your staff report are from the neighbor and not from the assessors. In speaking with the assessor, Mrs. Tony Gorse, I looked at what Tatiana had prepared, and we had a conversation. I memorialized that in an email that's appended to my memo. The highlighted parts in yellow are the parts from the assessor's comments herself. As you know, the property was subdivided in 1964. The garage that was on what would be the new property line was demolished. At then some point, a covered patio, a concrete covered patio. Anecdotally, Ms. Marinova told me that there was a lanai or a patio off the back kitchen. That was most likely this concrete covered patio. In speaking with the assessors, she confirmed that yes, the assessors came out in 1965, again in 1966, 67, and 69. Their role is not to determine whether or not these things were built legally or whether or not there was permits assessed for it. Is only to determine what was there on the site at the time. These words are the assessor's words, they're not mine. The concrete covered patio, in her description of it, was enclosed sometime between 1967 and 1969, and therefore converted into a carport. One could deduce logically that where there once used to be a garage, there no longer was one. So instead of rebuilding a garage at the end of the driveway, somebody then just enclosed it so that you could take a 90-degree turn and park your car there under this covered patio spot. That makes sense to me. Why would you create a situation that was more difficult for you to park your car when you could create a garage or a patio or a carport at the end of the driveway? So again, Mrs. Gorse explained, looking only at the assessor's files from what she could interpret, this concrete covered patio was struck from the assessor's roll, and then the detached carport showed up. I will note that the neighbor had commented about a CCP or a CEP in one of her subsequent emails. The CEP from the assessors is a concrete enclosed porch. That is the portion of the house in the document that you've seen in the front of the house. We don't know where the CCP is not documented in the assessor's rolls. One other thing the assessor explained to me is that when an assessor comes out and sees new construction, they notate it on the plans, new construction. The detached carport was not indicated as new when they came back in 1969. And that, again, in her professional opinion, would mean to her that it existed for some time and that the assessor was just picking it up. So with that, that's sort of the basis for what we were asked to do. You know, there aren't great files from 50, 60 years ago. It's quite possible that somebody got a building permit to enclose it. That may not exist anymore. There might not have been a variance because it wasn't needed one. We just don't know. But what we were tasked to do was ask the assessor whether or not these historical files lead us to believe that this thing existed in 1967. We feel like we've provided that information. This is a good project, and we hope you approve it. And I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Is there anyone else who is going to speak on behalf of this project? Okay. All right. Thank you. Any member of the council have any questions for the applicant or so? Okay. That being the case, we'll open the public hearing on this matter. Those who want to speak have 3 minutes to do so. And I won't explain further to this particular gentleman about the 3 minutes. He's well aware of it from both sides. Okay. Sure. Since there might be somebody in this room who doesn't know who you are, Len, would you identify yourself?
All right. Good evening, members of the council. My name is Len Rifkind. I'm a local land use attorney, and since everyone's announcing what they do, and I'm a former council member in Larkspur, so I'm very pleased that I heard about your comments about adopting some of the Larkspur tree designations, because we certainly want to make Marin safer for fire purposes. All right, so let's get to this. So can we have the next slide, Rebecca, please? Oh, there we go. Any event. So look, members of the council, what I'm gonna focus my presentation on, the key issue here is about when was this carport constructed. It either was before 67 or it was after 67. If it's before 67, it's potentially a legal non-conforming use because your ordinance came into effect, number 264, in April of 1967. I love being an archaeologist of Ross Municipal Code, and that's when your FAR became into effect. So if this carport was built before April of 67, then it would be a legal non-conforming use. If it's after April of 67, it's not. Why? Because there's no variance for it. And you heard Mr. Kennings tell you that he isn't sure whether it could have been built up to as late as 1969. He's effectively admitted that he's not sure. And your ordinance says in 18.52.040 F1 that you have to have a legal structure for it to be a legal non-conforming use so that the footage from this carport structure can count towards the second floor. And the property owner has the burden of proof by substantial evidence. And you heard Mr. Kennings tell you, well, I don't know, it's old records, we're not sure what it is and all of that. The key document in the 7 or 8 documents I gave you, I'm gonna go right to that instead of, because I know the mayor is gonna cut me off here in just a second. So I'm going to direct you to Exhibit 7 of the packet that I gave you. And what this is, these are the assessor's records that we're talking about. Now, these things are almost impossible to decipher. At least they are for normal people like me. But what I did is we tried to highlight so you can see what's going on. On the first page of Exhibit 7 that you have there, you'll see where there's 2 arrows pointing. One says CCP, that's the concrete covered patio, and the other lower arrow refers to a detached carport. So we know for sure those are 2 separate structures. Unfortunately, we think the applicant and staff have conflated that these are one and the same. They're not. The concrete covered patio has 180 square feet. You can see that as the next item. And the detached carport is 580 square feet. And we know when these things existed. If you start with a concrete patio, you see that there's numbers for it. As far back as, is that my 3 minutes, Mr. Mayor?
I'll let you keep going. I'll give you another minute.
Okay. What these assessors' records show you without, there's an objective. It shows you that in 1965 and 1967, there's no there's no carport, but it does show you there's a concrete covered patio. And the records show exactly how much was assessed for the carport, $1,331. This is irrefutable proof that this carport didn't get built until after 1967. Now, I realize it's really hard for you all to learn this on the fly. And what I encourage you to do is actually continue this hearing to give staff an opportunity to take a look at this, and we bring it back at your next council meeting so that we can all do this in an informed way, because it's impossible for me to present what we've spent a fair amount of time to present this information to you so that you can make an informed decision.
Okay, you're over the extra minute, but I understand it's a complicated matter.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate your courtesy.
Okay, is there any other member of the public who wishes to address us regarding this item?
Mayor Cool, members of the Town Council. My name is Cheryl Unterman, and my husband Dennis Unterman and I live at 1 Locust Avenue, next door to 78 Shady Lane, and have lived there for the last 35 years. We oppose this project approval for design review, non-conformity permit, and a variance to place a new garage in a required side yard setback. We oppose overdevelopment of 78 Shady Lane primarily regarding the second-story addition, which is 117 square feet larger and approximately 8 feet closer to our shared property line. This upper story addition has a window directly across from a shower door and next to a toilet, looking straight down into our kitchen and dining room. The second window is next to the bathtub, creating the same privacy issues. This is total disregard for our privacy. This proposed second-story addition presents privacy, visual, mass, and bulk impacts. There is also first-story additions of approximately 100 square feet on the same property line, as well as a separate application has been made for an ADU in the rear right corner of the property, 4 feet from the same property line and 16 feet in height. This development is damaging to our property. Design review approval should not be granted for these reasons, and because the proposed design guides does not follow the Ross design guidelines adopted in June 2019. I understand there is no discretionary approval for the ADU and only mention in the context that all proposed additions are moving closer to our common boundary line. If the ADU has to be placed along our common fence line, please do not approve the entire project also moving 8 feet closer. For these reasons, design review approval should not be granted. I want to emphasize the following points. The existing carport was never legally built, and therefore the applicant cannot use the square footage elsewhere in the project, primarily on the second floor of the existing dwelling. I know it was not legally built for 2 reasons. First, the carport required an FAR variance. Assessor records show no evidence of a carport until October 1969. There are no records of the carport in December 1965 or August 1967 from site visits from an assessor and from the assessor building records. So we know the carport was built after August 1967 and by October 1969. The town adopted FAR requirements in April 1967. There is no record of a required FAR variance for the carport as the property exceeds FAR limitations by 20%. Second, the carport, even if built before April 1967 when the FAR ordinance was adopted, it still did not comply with setback requirements. At the time, the setback requirements for the rear yard was 40 feet, and the illegal carport was built only 13 feet 10 inches from the rear property line. The assessor's records make clear the carport and the concrete-covered patio porch in the sunroom are different structures. The illegal carport is 580 square feet, and the CCP is 180 square feet.
Your time is up.
I just have one more paragraph. Can I finish?
One more paragraph, did you say?
Yeah.
That's okay.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I do not understand why staff and the applicant have conflated these two structures. They are separate and distinct. I would really like to bring this one up. But lastly, this development is in a flood zone and must comply with FEMA. The existing dwelling is in the flood zone and will likely need to be raised because this proposed project is considered a substantial construction and will likely exceed 50% of the appraised value. These current storms only heighten that FEMA requirements must be met.
That's a pretty long paragraph.
Okay, it was a paragraph, I finished. Okay, I don't get my closing, but thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other member of the public who wishes to address us? Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Lisa White, and my 40-year planning background includes that as a retired planning and building director in San Anselmo. I tell you that because it gave me the opportunity to review numerous zoning ordinances through the years and apply them to planning projects. I also became very familiar with the Marin County assessor records because property owners would submit them and I'd need to review them to be sure their structures were legal and non-conforming. The takeaways tonight are: one, the illegal carport was not lawfully constructed, clearly evidenced with written town council and county assessor documents, the aerials actually submitted by the applicant, which were incorrect, and the markups were incorrect, and a survey. Because the carport was not lawfully constructed, it's not eligible for a nonconformity permit, meaning that the floor area of the illegal carport proposed to be removed cannot be transferred to the first and second story additions of the dwelling as proposed by the applicant. And as you are aware, the reason the applicant is even applying for a nonconformity permit is because the existing structures on the property already exceed the FAR and lot coverage maximums, but she can't legally be granted a nonconformity permit. The design review findings cannot be made due to the mass and bulk of the design and the privacy impacts clearly evidenced in the town code findings and the town's residential guidelines, which I might add, the guidelines were only adopted in 2019, so they're very relevant. Finally, the Undermans welcome improvements to the property next door, as I'm sure all the neighbors do. It really is a mess. But this project exceeds the code allowed FAR and lot coverage, and maximizes and pushes everything out towards the property lines so that the owner can, as the architect said at an ADR meeting, have a center oasis. So at whose expense does the applicant get to enjoy a center oasis? The Undermans are correct. This is overdevelopment and the legal findings cannot be made to approve it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the chamber who wishes to speak?
Good evening, Council. I'm Sean Svensson. I live at 84 Shady Lane, which is just 2 doors away. And I did submit an email in support of the project. You didn't reference it, but I did send one in. I can give you the email address. But I think this is like a Shakespeare title, Much Ado About Nothing. I mean, this applicant has been through multiple iterations with the Design Review Board. And I will add that the one and only person really opposing it would just bring something new each and every time to delay the approval of this project. And again, here tonight, her council is requesting yet another delay to approve this project for more research. And in fact, the applicant has provided substantial documentation, I believe, And I don't believe anybody in this room can actually truly say with an absolute certainty that this means that or that means that. I think she's provided substantial evidence, more than anybody else, including aerial photography, that this carport existed. But that is like an ant on an elephant's butt, okay? This is a nice project. It's going to improve the neighborhood. It's going to improve the properties. It's sad that all these homes are so close together. But if you want any evidence of any kind tonight to really understand the subterfuge of what's going on here tonight, it's the opposition saying that the house should be elevated when a minute earlier she was complaining that the house is encroaching on views and too close. Well, you want an even larger structure next to you? No, you just want nothing. You want no development. And that is not an option for this town. We need to treat people with respect and allow projects to move forward when they've been gone through the appropriate review process, which is what has happened here. Staff has reviewed this multiple times and approved it and given it to you. So I think you should approve this project and let it move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the building who wishes to speak? Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to speak?
There are no raised hands.
Okay, the applicant has 5 minutes to rebut or to talk further about this project.
Mayor Cool, Sean Kennings again. Just in response to Mr. Rifkind, again, the assessor's records that he provided you are annotated by the objection by the neighbor and by themselves, their interpretations. What we provided you is the direct commentary from the assessors, from the professional who reviews those records, who understands those records. We are not making that up. We are not providing you conjecture or whatever. The neighbor is. That's all I wanted to say. As far as the design goes, like I said, I wasn't part of that, but you can see from the upper story that there are smaller windows than there are now. I mean, clearly it was thought out about privacy, bulk, and mass. This is not a bad project. It's a good project. And again, from the assessors, there was a covered patio in 1967. It was enclosed. It was picked up as a carport. It was clearly there prior to 1967. Unfortunately, we don't have records from the city, from the town, showing a variance or a building permit, but that doesn't mean it was built illegally. Thank you.
Thank you. Let me ask again, are there any further members of the public who wish to speak about this item? Seeing none?
And you should adjourn at this point.
Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. We'll bring it back to the council for deliberation and possibly action. Does any member of the council wish to lead off? Of whom?
Rebecca, I'm just wondering in ADR, were the second story windows a factor? Were they discussed?
No, they were brought up by the neighbor, by the Untermans. I think if I'm remembering correctly, they were discussed and they were okay with the size and location of the windows.
Anyone else on the council have any comments he or she wishes to make? Okay, does anybody want to make a motion? Well, let me interrupt. We did have a request for a continuance. Let's deal with that first.
Can we just make it?
Pardon me?
If there's a motion, we're not continuing. I mean, I move we approve the project.
Okay. Is there a second? All right, let's take a vote.
Councilmember McMillan?
Aye.
Councilmember Kircher?
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins?
Aye.
Mayor Cool?
Aye.
And Councilmember Breckus is recused.
Okay, that brings us to item number 16. 160 Lagunitas Road demolition, design review and variance, and town council consideration of adoption of resolution number 2291.
You want to take a break?
Yeah, would somebody tell Elizabeth to come back? Mr. Lopez Vega, you want to present this project?
Yes, Mayor. Give me 1 second. Share my screen. I'm just going to do this. Okay. Good evening, Mayor. Welcome again, and council members. Tonight, the applicant at 160 Lagunitas Road requests approval of demolition, design review, and a variance to allow to construct a single-family residence with a detached garage and a pool. The project proposes to construct a new 6,200 square foot, two-story single-family residence and a 394 square foot matching detached garage. The proposed project will have a natural palette of materials, and the windows and doors will be deeply recessed. The applicant is also proposing a vehicular and pedestrian gate located on the south side of the property. The gate will match the palette of the structure on the property. All fencing along Lagunitas Road will be buffered with a layer of vegetation. New landscape, a swimming pool, and hardscape are proposed throughout the property. The variance is needed to construct a new pool within the side and rear yard setback. The ADR reviewed the project at the December 13th meeting, 2022, with their meeting and recommendations that the project complied with the design review guidelines and criteria. The applicant has amended the plans according to the ADR members' advice. The changes include relocating the generator out of the front setback, making the front fence facing Lagunitas Road more transparent, and lowering the garage height by 1 foot, as well as removing the dormer. Staff recommends that the Town Council adopts resolution number 2291, approving demolition, design review, and the variance for this project. That concludes my presentation.
Does the project applicant wish to make any presentation or? Oh, excuse me a second, yeah. Does any member of the council have questions for our staff? Okay.
Hi, Stephen Sutro. I'm representing the applicant. AJ and Melissa Rohde are here if we have questions of them. And I was able to visit with most of you at the site or speak to you after you made your visit. I think that the staff did a great job reviewing the project, and I think the documents are clear, so we won't present anything other than be available for questions. And Eric Blazin, who authored the landscape design, is here as well if we have questions about that.
Does any member of the council have questions for the applicant?
One little question, maybe it's to the staff though. The variance for the pool, because the pool is in the same area, so maybe you could just explain why there's a variance needed.
What did the applicant want to?
I can go ahead and answer that if you'd like. So the existing pool is in the setbacks, and they are proposing a pool in a similar location in both the side and rear yard setbacks, sort of justified by the fact that there's an existing pool in the setbacks already.
Okay, does any other member have any questions for the applicant? If not, we'll open the public hearing. Does any member of the public wish to address us regarding this project? Is there anyone on Zoom who wishes to address us?
There are no raised hands.
What did you say?
There are no raised hands.
Okay. That being the case, we'll bring it back to the council for comment and action, if any.
And just remind you to close the public hearing after the comment.
Oh, yeah. I'm closing public hearing in order to bring it back to council. You probably all knew that. Yes.
Well, I was going to say, I think it's really beautiful, as I told Steve, beautiful design, love it. I had one question, which was, we have a guideline that says no accessory buildings in the front. And I have seen that kind of pass by without comment before, and I just want to bring it up because there's been other projects where we kind of did bring this up and a little bit torture people over it. So I think it probably warrants mention in the staff report just because it's a guideline. And so I was satisfied with, the ideas around, having it there and the landscaping that I think will make it blend in, but I just wanted to bring that up. But with that, I thought it was a great project and could support it.
Any other comments?
So I'll move to approve.
Councilmember McMillan.
Aye.
Councilmember Kircher.
Aye.
Councilmember Robbins.
Aye.
Mayor Cool.
Aye.
Councilmember Breckus.
Aye.
Right. A vote of 5, the motion passes.
Okay, the next item that we on the council will be going through is number 17. Is there anyone who wishes on the council? Oh, yeah, sorry. We will go back to item 14. Who's making the staff report on that?
You and Julie.
Yeah, do you want to go ahead or should I?
Oh, okay.
I'll go ahead.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, this idea was proposed by a long-term resident. The idea is simply to recognize good citizens for work that would otherwise remain unappreciated and kind of under the radar. In thinking more about it, I was thinking that instead of having people lobbying town council members, maybe we could have people submit nominations to the Ross Rec Director, and we could just do it once a year, and they could be the Grand Marshal of the 4th of July Parade, just to recognize good under the radar service. So those are my thoughts.
I'll just add that I was and am concerned that we not spend a lot of staff or council time on this, but we are maybe the only, but one of the only few entities, cities or towns in the county that do not have some provision for recognizing temporary work by residents.
Well, I just want to, can I make a comment?
Sure.
I think the first iteration of this idea that I heard was that it was going to be an annual thing and the council was going to recognize it, and now it's a little bit shifted. I do want to remind you, when I first ran that 4th of July parade, we actually did have something like that. We would ask a resident who had done a lot At that point, I was told it should be Rosanna Lordeau because she had run the 4th of July parade and maybe the town dinner before or something. But then it started seeming weird because it was like, are we just going to pass the baton? You do it and then you get honored at it, which would be fine. But there was that process where you would ask them and then they were somehow recognized that they would ride in the parade and wave. So that was a practice, but I mean, I guess one question I have for you is if you're going to talk about people who do a lot for the town, it actually would be the 5 of us. So it's like,
I nominate you.
I mean, is it really going to be, you know, these people that do these things and it's not like, you know, the head, you know, all the volunteers that are leading the school and doing the PTO and I mean, it just seems like I can't really understand who these under the radar people are going to be. And if we do under the radar people, then we're really going to recognize people who don't do it at the level that some people do that is really impressive and pretty intense. So at that point, we're recognizing ourselves, which I think would be a little strange.
Well, I think people like us get recognition because we're council members, so I wouldn't, and same with Ross School, so I would propose recognizing someone who doesn't have a title. And the example that was given to me for someone to recognize was Robert Smithton, who runs around every day and picks up trash throughout the town. And Elizabeth and I saw him continuously when we were sitting in front of the post office. He doesn't do it to get any accolades. He does it because he cares about our town. And so I think that would be, in my mind, the criteria. It wouldn't be someone who has a title. It would be someone who's just a good citizen.
Okay, but name 5 more people that you can think of, because I'm not sure that every year we should, I mean, it's like my thought when I heard about this, and I heard that name associated with it, was let's honor that person because that sounds great. But, you know, it did seem to me like to turn this into this annual thing is maybe putting a lot of pressure to like go out in the community, find these people. Maybe they exist, maybe they, you know.
You know, I kind of was thinking the same, that I'm not sure that a once a year and Grand Marshal, I mean, that's like, it's kind of a small town. I mean, I don't know if they're like, how we'd find that person every year. I like the idea of recognizing people who have done things that are special, but maybe it could be, you know, whenever the council wants to, once a year, twice a year, once every other year, and it could be at a council meeting and then a little article in the morning after. So there'd be really nice recognition. People would read about what that person did, but we wouldn't have the pressure of naming someone every year because, you know, who rises to that level every single year? And we have a tradition of the mayor running, you know, being the grand marshal basically of the parade. And so the mayor would have to step down. And, you know, that's kind of a special thing to be part of the parade. So I would support it, but a little less formally, and have the recognition in town hall and with an article in the morning after.
Yeah, I mean, there's not like a flyer for the 4th of July parade. I mean, I guess we have some flyers that we do in advance, so you could announce it there, but it's not really like there's a speech where you say, hey, this guy did this. So that might be a little harder to really get the message out to people that we're honoring somebody also.
Well, we could do advance publicity associated with the parade. But I hear what you all are saying. Maybe we just start by honoring Robert Smithton, and if anyone else bubbles up, then we can make a decision later.
I think to honor him would be really nice. And I love the idea of having a little section in the morning after with his photo and with a description of who he is and, you know, what he does. And I think that'd be a real honor. That's a real honor.
Do we want to formalize this? Give it a name?
We actually have a policy in our procedures, our council procedures, that say all requests for proclamation, certificates of recognition, appreciation should be submitted to the mayor and town manager for consideration. The subject to recipient shall be related. It is with the mayor's discretion whether to prepare such a document and place it on the agenda. So we already have that process. Some of the things you're saying kind of echo what that
Good.
talks about.
Thank you. Perfect.
Okay, so does anyone want to carry this idea further at this point? Okay. Now, like I said before, we now are at no action items, item number 17 on our agenda. Does anyone have any correspondence they want to report? Seeing none, does anyone wish to request future council items? Julie?
Yes. I have a neighbor who is very concerned about the house across the street being used as a short-term rental. And I think we need to have a conversation about what rules the town should have, if any, about short-term rentals. That was in 2016, before I was on the council and before there was any problem with any short-term rentals in town. So it's kind of a hypothetical conversation. I think it's a real issue now.
I would support it just because I mean, I've heard a few concerns. I mean,
Do support it?
I do.
Okay, well, that's all we need. You'll have to put it on the agenda. Consideration of B&Bs.
I thought that we had an ordinance, but apparently I'm incorrect.
No, we
We do not.
discussed it some years ago and decided there wasn't a problem and we didn't need it at that time.
Don't other communities in Marin have such a, yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor and Council. May I work with the mayor and the mayor pro tem on scheduling of that? We do have some real substantive items that are coming forward, and this would be something our planning and building director would need to work on and just, you know, gather the information. I know that there's been some good staff reports written in advance, so we would, you know, try not to reinvent the wheel too much, but to update the council on what's happening in other cities, et cetera. It would take a little bit of time, and I know that we've got we'd like to come back to the council with the REACH codes in February, and in March we're going to be we're working with the consultants to bring forward an update to the council about the master facilities plan that's underway. So do I have that? Is my recollection correct, Rebecca? Okay, so I just want to make sure, I'd like to work with the mayor and the mayor pro tem just to make sure you're not overly burden the council too, and staff, and thank you.
Any objection to that? Okay, anybody else have any requests for future council items? If not, we're adjourned. Yeah, but I get 25 minutes. Yeah, because of the problem. Hey, this thing wasn't working. Krista, this thing isn't working. Well, I used, I can't see anything to turn it on. Or is this thing, what's this thing? Well, you have a month to get it on. Except the lights up front.
Yeah, the warning's helpful.
night.
I'll learn all this, but you could do it two-handed.
I have one.
Oh, so you bring it, okay.